Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining. This is the Oracle Autonomous Database Learning Lounge. I am Marcos Senacibia, part of the product management team for Autonomous Database. And well, welcome to 2025, right? Our first session of the year 2025. So today's session, we're going to do the third part of the migration to Autonomous Database. So we're going to have Derek Harlow and Herman Viscuso. They're going to be talking about basically the database management, right? So once you loaded the databases into the Autonomous Database and you're running them in Oracle Cloud, right, in OCI, what are the monitoring capabilities that you have there, right? So how to obtain, deeper insights and understand real-time performance, right, of those databases, and also evaluate them, right, from the entire fleet all the way to a single resource, how to manage and understand those databases with powerful tools, right? So we're going to have product managers answering any questions you might have. So if you have questions, please make sure to type them in the Q&A in Zoom. We're also going to distribute links to you via the chat. So if you look at the chat, we're going to send you links, and especially this link here. If you are watching this later on YouTube or something like that, you might actually want to go to that link, because then you can register for the series so that you get notified about the next sessions that we have. Okay. All right. Speaking of links, these are the links that I'm distributing right now. So if you take a look at chat now, you're going to see all of these links there. Okay. So from getting started with Autonomous Database to joining us on LinkedIn or X or Blue Sky, and also having your questions. So if you have a question to us, you can actually do it in Stack Overflow, or you can use our own developer Slack, right? So Oracle has a Oracle developers workspace in Slack that is available to everyone. So you can go in and then you can search for the channel called Oracle-Autonomous-Database, and then you can go immediately there and ask your question. Okay, we're going to be reading that and answering. All right.
Hopefully you can see my presentation here. Okay. All right. So, okay, I'm Herman Viscuso, and I focus a lot on Autonomous Database dedicated, and also on the serverless side, specifically on transaction processing. And I focus a lot on database observability. So that's why I'm very, very glad today to have Derek Harlow here with me. Derek works as a senior product manager in the Enterprise Cloud Observability Management organization at Oracle, and he focuses on the OCI Database Management Service, which is the main topic of this session. Okay, so I think you're really, really gonna like it. All right, so I doubt you never heard about Autonomous Database before, but before we go into understanding the database management service on top of Autonomous, I wanted to give you like a really, really quick explanation of Autonomous. So basically, think about the power of the Oracle database, and this is specifically for newcomers. Think about all the power of the Oracle database, any workload, any data type, high performance engine. Think of it as a service in the cloud, fully managed, cloud native service, with a special recipe for automation. There you can see, machine learning. We have the special recipe on top where you can think of auto everything, right? Auto indexing, auto scaling, self-patching, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of things that you don't have to do anymore when you have this intelligent system running on top of the service to basically take care of all of this. So really simplified ADB in a nutshell slide for newcomers, okay? So I think we're all familiar with database monitoring. So a lot of you probably dealt with database monitoring before, but database observability is more than just monitoring, and it's super important for companies as they move up the database spectrum, as you can see here, towards mission criticality, towards mission critical workloads. So our customers and typical customer of Autonomous Database really like automation and all the things that all the work that they can save because of the automation, but they also want detailed visibility of what's going on with the workload, right? So that totally makes sense, and we call this trust and verify oversight, or sometimes trust but verify oversight. Okay, so we are focusing a lot on observability in spite of the fact that the service is automating and uses a lot of automation. This is very important for us. All right. So in autonomous, there are multiple things that you can use to achieve a really nice database observability pipeline, to put it some way. If you use the service, you know that you have Performance Hub there. You know, if you use Enterprise Manager, you know that Autonomous Database is a target in in Enterprise Manager. You know that there are a whole bunch of API events, logs, systems, OCI logging, metrics, etc., etc. All of that is available for you, so you can take a look at the CPU usage, you know, memory utilization, storage sessions, etc., etc. Recently, we even added visibility over the ACD, the Autonomous Container Database, for metrics that are specifically at that level. We also have a lot of APIs that tap into metrics at the VM level and at the Exadata level, and we keep adding more and more and more. We want you to be able to see the whole database stack. Okay, obviously you can set up alarms, etc., etc., with a very nice integration, not only with OCI services but also with external services. We've been playing with Grafana and a lot of other, systems like Prometheus, for example, to basically send metrics to other systems, not only to OCI. Now, as you can see there in the circle in the bottom right, I have DB management. Besides Grafana and Prometheus, DB management is an OCI service that is very, very, very comprehensive. So we want to show you that today, and we will have Derek cover this key service, which as I said before, it belongs to OCI, and covers advanced monitoring capabilities for Autonomous Database, not only for Autonomous, also for other database services, but Autonomous has a great coverage, as you will see in one of Derek's slides. You can get insights and real-time performance monitoring for ADB. And we'll also take a closer look at fleet-wide analysis and how you can define groups of databases if you have like something that looks like a fleet, but it's not necessarily with everything in the same place. You can create these sort of groups to define fleets, etc. So now it's time to give Derek the space. So Derek, the stage is all yours. Thank you for being here, and go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much for the introduction. Let me go ahead and I'll do a quick level agenda here. So we will be covering kind of the observability management offerings as a whole. Then we'll be looking at an overview for our database management service. It looks like half of you are familiar, half of you haven't seen it before. So I think it'll be really good information there. Then we'll look at the larger fleet management and then kind of drilling down into that single database view to get all those details for your single database. Then look at the performance diagnostics, performance tuning capabilities, database administration tasks, kind of all within a single console. We won't spend much time on Exadata infrastructure monitoring, but I did want to kind of include some of those key points that we offer within the service. And then finally, we'll look at the Ops Insight service with some larger capabilities and tools and features around capacity planning, forecasting, and kind of fleet-wide analysis of your application code and things like that. So basically, we have the observability management platform. We basically take all of the telemetry from all of our different cloud environments that we support, as well as on-premise databases. So we can support OCI, obviously, but also integration within Microsoft Azure. So if you're using Oracle database at Azure, other capabilities there, Autonomous Database is running on that, and we can monitor those within our services as well. So you can kind of have a mixed estate, hybrid kind of deployments, but they're all visible within one single location within our service. And so we have all the telemetry coming in from OCI, all of the base services, kind of collecting all of your metrics from the infrastructure and all of your logs and your details. And on top of that, the observability management services kind of provide these in-depth, comprehensive tools for the application performance monitoring, which actually looks at spans of your application code running from anywhere from webhooks down to Tomcat servers, collecting logs, the database hosts, the databases themselves. So you can kind of see spans, find any pain points in your application, and then trace it to where that might be occurring. We look at stack monitoring, which is an overview of your entire infrastructure for your database deployments, out-of-the-box EBS and PeopleSoft applications. You can quickly onboard and monitor that holistically. Logging analytics, we basically look at log sources from all of these different telemetry and infrastructure resources, and we can drill down and identify any pain points, and we can also ingest custom logs and things like that to build meaningful dashboards for whatever you might need. And then obviously we'll be discussing the database management and Ops Insight services later, so I won't talk a whole lot about those here. So specifically, our database management service provides that single pane of glass view, like we said, for databases deployed anywhere. So you can see all of your autonomous databases located in one single location with a lot of the key performance metrics and indices, as well as kind of some in-depth analysis on how those are performing over time. We really want to provide quick insights into any root causes within your fleet. We have integrations within the OCI monitoring service, so you can quickly see all of the status alerts for all of your alarms based on your database resources. You can really slice and dice this based on tagging or based on database groups. So if you are a database administrator and you have like a production group of databases versus a lower level, you can quickly find and sort those to kind of get a meaningful view of your database's performance. And then finally, we also want to provide operations at the fleet level, so we can run jobs against single databases, but also among other databases groups to pull back data into our object storage for long-term persistent storage for any sort of reports, any SQL details that you need to run against the database. Could it be DML, DDL, or even just select statements to bring that in JSON format. So some of the key use cases again here is that single view. Here we're looking at the fleet overview for our databases. We'll kind of cover this here in a little bit, but you can see it's kind of a comprehensive view of all of your deployed databases. If you do have a mixed deployments between autonomous and others, we do show this here with your key performance indices, looking at your average active sessions, CPU, memory, IO, etc., and then short-term analysis trends that we can also see here. You get a quick view of your database resource availability, so you can see your monitoring status. But then we provide kind of a resource usage over your entire fleet. These views are really kind of empowering you to find which resources might need to be addressed with any specific issues. But one of the key things that I think we've already discussed is that this is a fully managed service. So there is no overhead for managing the service itself. It's a very quick and easy onboarding integration with private endpoints to autonomous databases. So you can get started very quickly on monitoring your environments. We do have cloud elasticity, so if you ever have any fluctuations within your autonomous databases, you will also realize that within the monitoring costs associated with it with our service. We do the real-time performance monitoring, but then we also provide some of those key administration tasks and visibility for our databases. So some of the key features, again, is that fleet overview, looking at out-of-the-box performance dashboards, so you can quickly see how the health is for your autonomous database. We have kind of the integration of what Enterprise Manager offers for that real-time monitoring. If you're familiar with Performance Hub and a lot of those capabilities and in-depth monitoring of your database with the Ash Analytics, we also provide that within OCI. You can see those integrations within our service as well. And we're continually building upon the visibility that you have for your application running on your database, as well as any tools and features like your SQL Tuning Advisor or any of those SQL Plan Management, Optimizer Statistic reports. Those are all available within our autonomous databases as well now with the advanced capabilities. We do have the database administration tasks. We do have some differences between the serverless and autonomous databases dedicated, which we'll show kind of on this next slide, pertaining to some of the storage utilization and some of that administration as well. So here we're looking specifically kind of at the new advanced capabilities that we are providing within the autonomous database. And so kind of breaking it down to the feature types, we can see we have database performance administration capabilities. We now include the SQL Tuning Advisor, SQL Tuning Sets administration, SQL Plan Management, so you can view how your SQL plans are being kind of utilized within your database. You can view the optimizer statistics for your tables, how successful those auto runs are occurring. And then we also offer kind of the in-depth view and tools with new features around AWR Explorer, which I'll kind of discuss later as a visualization of AWR report and metrics over time. And then we'll see the SQL Insights integration within Ops Insights, which kind of gives you a holistic view of all of your SQL statements running across your entire fleet of databases and finding any outliers or any degradation in performance to quickly analyze where you might need to do performance tuning for your application code. We do provide the Performance Hub. Again, if you're familiar with Enterprise Manager, you might have already been using that for autonomous databases in OCI. But on top of that, we've built in Top Activity Lite. So it's kind of a auto refresh, very quick and snappy application on top of Performance Hub. We have SQL monitoring, which we'll discuss in a little bit around the monitoring of SQL statements. And then we also included kind of the blocking sessions tab. If you're familiar with that already, we'll show that. But then a lot of the reports, if you want to generate AWR reports, Ash reports, and ADDM reports, you now have those capabilities within the database management service. We do provide alert log views, so you can find all of your Oracle view alert logs, kind of Aura errors coming through, and we build visualizations on a lot of our tools, so it's more easy to digest the information and kind of drill down to when those are occurring and what is actually happening within the database. As I said before, the storage administration capabilities. For serverless, we do provide that read-only view of your table spaces, so you can see the usage for your big file table spaces. For the autonomous dedicated, we do provide full management, which is a similar support to our cloud and external databases already in our service. So you can create data files, you can extend data files, you can add table spaces and do a lot of that functionality within our tool itself. We provide the optimizer statistics, which we'll show. So the admin user has privileges to see the collection stats, how those are performing, and kind of assess how the health is for your storage or for your optimizer statistics. We provide read-only views of your database parameters, or the ones that are configurable for the autonomous database. And then we have the out-of-the-box alarm integration. So we do integrate with the OCI monitoring service, so you can quickly get started by creating some of these out-of-the-box custom alarms that we've provided, but also kind of altering those to customize them for your own autonomous database environments. So kind of looking at the high-level fleet overview, here we can see, again, this is the view of all of your databases in one single location. We do have time period selectors here. So let me go ahead and just kind of show here on the slides where you have the last 24 hours. You can view the performance of your fleet. You can view the past 7 days or the past hour, and kind of get an idea of what the health is for your databases. But we also have built-in time period comparison. So you can see located below, we kind of have these trend analysis with these kind of arrows pointing down to show you what the change is over this time period, how your database is performing, and if there's any specific trends in the short term, you can kind of drill down and figure out what's going on in your database. I mean, obviously, the throughput of this database has changed significantly over this previous 24 hours to today. So you can kind of get an idea of what might be driving that through your application code and kind of get a check on the health of your environment. We also have integration into our alarms here. So you can see the OCI monitoring service, a quick view of which are critical alerts, warning and information. And then these expand out so you can drill down to figure out what those alarms are that are occurring within your entire fleet. Again, you can sort this all based on your compartment that you're viewing or your database groups. And we even have integration with tags. So you can tag a specific resource either as production or non-production, and kind of view those within the fleet view as well. We also provide another visualization on the tree map view for your performance. So you can select a specific metric. Here we're looking at DB time for your databases, and you can differ the grouping here. So we do have autonomous database groupings. You can look at serverless or dedicated and kind of get an idea of which ones are consuming the most resources. So the size of the box is indicative of how much of the DB time it's consuming or for the database itself. But then the color is actually an indicator of how much change it has been in the comparison period. So these databases over here that are blue are kind of changing a 10 to 50% increased in DB time over that time period. So it's a good indication of where your resources are being consumed for your databases, but also how those are changing over time. So you can quickly identify any outliers or anomalies in your database performance. So if you were to find within the fleet overview a specific database you want to get more information on, you can quickly drill down by selecting any of those from the fleet overview or from the tree map, and you can kind of get a holistic view of your resource page kind of providing a lot of the details, but then showing a view of how this is performing in real time. So we're looking at the last 60 minutes in this view, and we have a monitoring status timeline here, which is a quick indication of if the database has been up in the past 60 minutes. If there's any downtime, you'll see either a red box indicating that or a yellow box if there's been a temporary availability during that time period. And this can again extend out to the previous 7 days. So you get a good view of how your database is performing, along with the quick insights into the activity for your average active sessions, and then those key metrics again. This is a very simple console. So you have all of your performance capabilities for tuning here, a lot of your management capabilities built in, and finally that OCI integration into administration for your monitoring service, preferred credentials for your resources, and then your database groups. So it's kind of one single location to perform a lot of tasks for your administration and performance tuning for your autonomous databases. So for performance diagnostics specifically, if you are familiar with Enterprise Manager, or if you've been utilizing Performance Hub and OCI already, you're very familiar with these views. So we're looking here at basically the real-time monitoring of your database. So this is an auto refresh of 15 seconds. I've sped it up here, obviously, but any new data that's running on your database is going to be continually added towards the end of this chart here. And it's very granular details for the performance of your application, what user, what session is kicking those off, the program from where they're coming from. So it could be a host and the sense of ADB. So this is not an autonomous database, but a lot of the internal Oracle are separated from this. So you don't actually get insights into those, and they aren't cluttering the view of your application and the performance there. So you can kind of quickly get an idea of what SQL statements are kind of consuming the most resources in your environment. And the color coding basically shows you what type of weight it is. So a lot of blue is going to be a lot of I/O happening on your database. Green is typically looking at CPU, and then a lot of the other reds can be around the application weights. So if you have blocking sessions or buffer busy weights or something similar, you'd quickly be able to identify which SQL statements are running those and which ones are consuming the most of those wait times for your environment. So we do have the SQL monitoring tab. So this is the application performance analysis. We can kind of get a holistic view of the SQL performance for a specific SQL statement here. We can see the execution of all your SQL statements, drill down to an individual statement to get more statistics on that, how much buffer gets it's running, how frequent it's running, when it was first loaded into your environment, who's running the code. And then we get down to the execution plan details. So you can get a full view of how the SQL is performing, if it's doing any joins, if it's hitting any indexes. You can get a sense of the join order, so you can look at your application code if you need to make any adjustments from the SQL query itself. You can make those and kind of view that as you go. You get a sense of the parallelization, you get a full SQL text view, and we can even show this in a visual way. So instead of having this listed down as a table, we do have the option of kind of seeing where these joins are occurring between objects and highlighting any pain points or kind of expensive operations. So if you're having a join with 1 million rows compared to a join with 1,000 rows, you'd see a larger bar for that larger join operation to really highlight where you might be executing or consuming the most resources within your SQL statements. We also provide estimated versus realized rows whenever you're doing these full table scans. So you can kind of highlight those where the estimation for the optimizer is off by a certain percentage. So you can kind of see if there's any problem with your statistics on your tables. This is the blocking sessions tab. So this is available within our servers for the autonomous databases. So you can kind of see which sessions are blocking others from your application. You can see when those first started, the event that it's happening. It could be a row lock contention. It could be a buffer busy waits or something similar. So we'll kind of give you an idea of what's happening in your environment. And also you can quickly terminate the session by selecting it and killing the session if it is blocking a significant portion of your workload, and you know that's either spinning, or it's somebody who's maybe walked away from their code after not committing it. So you can kind of get an idea and kind of fix these issues very quickly. So now we'll take kind of a look at some of these advanced capabilities that we have within the service for monitoring. And so traditionally, we're looking at the AWR workload repository, the workload repository for your database. This is kind of a view of all of your metrics and wait events for your database in these reports. And so historically, you'd have to generate these reports from snapshots occurring on the database, either at an hour interval or 15-minute intervals, whatever you've configured. And it kind of shows you the performance of the database within that time period. And so if you have a large performance event that's occurring over 4 hours and you're trying to investigate what is happening on your database, you could generate a report for that entire 4 hours, but it will sum up all of those await events and then it will average them out. So you kind of lose a lot of the granularity over time when you're generating these larger reports. If you were to generate it over a smaller period of time and kind of view the wait events, you have less average. So if it's more impactful time, the wait events that are contributing to your issues would be elevated, and you can quickly realize what's going on in your environment. It's not always easy to see where your performance degradation occurred. So this is where we've kind of built this tool where we're taking the individual snapshots of your AWR data, but we're showing it over a larger period of time. So you can actually get an indication of when these wait events were spiking versus when they weren't contributing to your issue. So you can draw your correlations, find your anomalies within your wait events and how the performance is on your database, and get a really good idea of what wait events or what was specifically causing the problem and at what time that problem started to occur, and then drill down to really investigate and find how to mitigate that issue. So we don't only take the AWR wait event details, we also can pull in load profiles from OCI to see logons to the database, commits and things like that, and then also kind of correlate that to our specific wait events on the database. These are all customizable, so you can remove these specific charts if you're looking at specific wait events that you want to correlate. You can kind of bring those together at the top, and you can also share these reports and generate additional ASH reports, AWR reports from this console as well. So it's a very quick and easy way to get an idea of how your database is performing on these really in-depth statistics, but over larger periods of time. And so again, you can see the load profile for your database, and then you can kind of reconstruct your historic performance from AWR data into a view like Performance Hub would show. So if you're going through and you're finding these wait events that are occurring at specific intervals, you can correlate those to the specific SQL statements that are running those, and then go through your mitigation of performance tuning for the SQL statements. So speaking of performance tuning, we do offer all of these new capabilities for autonomous databases. So here we're looking at creating SQL tuning sets, which are basically objects on the database that contain SQL details, and then also the performance statistics for those SQL statements. So you'd be able to see execution times, the plans for the execution, plan hash values, all in a single object on the database. So once you have that created within, let's say, a production database, you can move that object to a lower level environment, do a lot of your performance tuning that you want to within that object, and then move it back into production and create some of those baselines if necessary. So it's a great way to actually optimize the performance of your database. And to generate these, you can do it in several different ways. You can do it from past performance by looking at AWR snapshots and pulling in the SQL statements. You can do it incremental cursor cache. So if you're actually sampling the activity of your database over time and collecting statements running during those periods. So if you're going through an application code upgrade, you can basically filter out the statements that you want. So let's say you want all of the select statements from a specific user. You can put that criteria and filter criteria in, pull those statements into an object within the database in the SQL tuning set, and then perform analysis on those specific SQL statements. Once you have the SQL tuning set created, you're able to integrate it quickly into the SQL Tuning Advisor. So you can quickly see which execution plans are valid for your environments. You can do an improve performance. So this will basically run through and optimize the execution of your SQL statements. and then create profiles or recommendations on fixes to better optimize the environments. And then finally, if you do have your SQL plan management, which is automatically enabled for autonomous databases, you'd be able to get the visualization indications on how those are performing. So you can get the last executions for those plan baselines. You can see your SQL plan statistics on how the attributes of those, if they're auto purge, reproducible, if they're fixed plans, and things like that. And you'd be able to drill down into the individual SQL plans to see which statements those are associated with, as well as the execution plan that's been accepted into those profiles. So if there's multiple ones, you'd be able to quickly see and get an idea of how those are performing within your autonomous database. And finally, we have a view of the optimizer statistics. So you'd be able to see that auto job running, the outcome of those results, and validate that everything is working correctly within your database objects for the statistics, because the optimizer can only choose the best plan if you provide it with the statistics to do so. So for the database administration capabilities, we do offer these basic administration. So right now we're looking kind of at the users. You'd be able to see all of the users configured for your database, kind of the expiration dates for that environment, or for the user, as well as the account status. So if it's locked, timed out, if you've had the incorrect password, hit it too many times, you could have that auto lock on, and then you can kind of get some of those database default table space details, and then table space details, so you can kind of get an idea of how your users are within the database. And then quickly going down into that same console, you can go through your storage administration tasks. Again, earlier I said it's autonomous serverless. You can view them with the read-only of the utilization for your table spaces. But for the dedicated, you'd actually be able to add data files and do some of these storage administration tasks that we offer already for our cloud databases. This is the database groups that we're looking at. So you can quickly run SQL statements across multiple databases. Again, pulling the collection from different databases into JSON format into object storage. So you have long-term storage, secure storage that you can access at any time in the JSON reports to basically do any sort of ad hoc reporting that you need for your database deployments. And you can even do code upgrades here as well. So you can do DML or DDL against your databases through these jobs and kind of get the output of how those are performing. So I'm not going to spend very much time here discussing the Exadata infrastructure, but I did want to include it because we do offer a lot of these capabilities for our database monitoring environment. So here is a fleet overview for your Exadata infrastructure. This is basically looking at your storage infrastructure. And so it's going to be a very similar look and feel to our fleet of our Oracle databases, but we're looking at kind of the holistic view of your Exadata stack. And then we go to the individual servers as well, so you can get kind of the key resource utilization for your storage grid and your storage cell servers. So you can kind of get how those are performing, if you're going to be hitting capacity for any of those recently, and kind of look at optimizing the deployment of your databases on these Exadata infrastructure to kind of get the most out of these. Today, we don't offer this if you only have autonomous databases running on your Exadata. You would be required to have kind of another VM host out there running where we can collect these details. But we are working with roadmaps to see if we can integrate some of these details for autonomous only Exadata deployments, but we will see when we can provide that. So this is kind of a look. If you drill down into your Exadata infrastructure, you'd be able to see your storage server health. You can see your individual availability for each of your servers, and then you kind of get a holistic view of how those are performing. And then we even show some of the ASM disk group views, and then we can integrate this into a lot of the performance details around the database performance, usage. You can get flash cache, hard disk utilization, and really look at if there's any failures or anomalies or configuration drift within your Exadata systems to really address any of those performance problems on your Exadata stack. So the in-depth details, again, this is through Performance Hub for container databases. You'd be able to view how the performance is for your Exadata infrastructure. And a lot of this kind of goes down to looking at your most expensive databases running on these environments. So you can kind of find any outliers within I/O coming from your storage servers and kind of contribute to those to individual databases, where you can go through and do some of those performance tuning capabilities to really either reduce I/O or, again, look at migration from one server to another, one Exadata machine to another, to really optimize the utilization of your Exadata fleet. This is some of the details around your cells and the performance around here. Very granular visualized details, so you can kind of get a quick indication of how these are performing for the individual flash disks or hard disks, or any anomalies that might be occurring. So you can kind of pinpoint any problems they might be having within your Exadata. You can, again, look at your smart I/O, your flash cache, to see the performance and health and utilization. And then finally, again, looking at the configuration of the details. This has some attributes into the ASM, so you can see kind of the redundancy configuration of your ASM disk groups. So I did want to kind of bring out some of these details here. So for our advanced monitoring capabilities for autonomous, these are not currently applicable, which we'll see kind of in a matrix here coming up soon. But we do provide a lot of the fleet holistic views of your performance for your autonomous databases, a lot of the performance diagnostics and tuning administration capabilities, and then a lot of the database administration. And so what I haven't shown yet is we do have a couple of new features that we're going to be bringing to the service. The search session is actually already available for our cloud databases, but we will be integrating the search SQL, so you can kind of search within your database for specific SQL statements based on text, properties, or even plan hash values, and kind of drill down from there into Performance Hub to get an idea of how those are performing. And then you can quickly utilize that to run the SQL Tuning Advisor or create SQL tuning sets off of your search criteria. A similar search session, you can find your session details for what's running on your database right now, and kind of get into insights into how those are performing, what's going on in your database specifically. If you're searching for kind of application code running from a specific user, if you're testing application code, you'd be able to quickly find it within your environment. So here's a look at the supported deployments for our service. So we can basically see we have all of the capabilities around autonomous as we do our other environments, again, with the exclusions of our Exadata monitoring capabilities, which are not currently available. So now looking at another kind of tandem service that we provide, database management is looking at the real-time performance monitoring for your autonomous databases. Ops Insights really takes in a lot of this historic data and kind of brings everything together into one single telemetry store, where it can do advanced processing with AutoML for capacity planning and forecasting for your autonomous databases, as well as a lot of the telemetry from SQL statements all into one single location, where you can view how the performances of your application code is against your enterprise, as well as doing any ad hoc reporting for your autonomous databases if necessary. So really, we're looking kind of at a larger view, many use cases across many different roles that would be able to kind of utilize all of these features within this service. So some of the highlights we look at for Ops Insights is capacity planning. So we store 25 months of data within our service here in Ops Insights, and we're able to utilize that for the trending and forecasting of the capacity of key performance metrics, such as your CPU, memory, I/O, and things along those nature, with the storage as well. And we're able to build in seasonality to this as well. So if you have a busier time of year, we can actually realize that within our computations and really provide accurate forecasting for the future for your environment. So it's really proactive management of your autonomous databases and really kind of fixing any bottleneck issues with resources before they can become a larger problem. We also provide this on the Exadata level, so you can see your infrastructure utilization and kind of look through kind of in-depth analysis of migrating databases from one Exadata stack to another, or enabling more resources on your Exadatas to get the most out of your compute performance there. ADM Spotlight So this is looking at ADDM reports over time. So the granular snapshots, again, very similar to what we talked about with our AWR Explorer, but we're exposing these snapshots over a larger period of time so you can find any anomalies or any repeat offenders for specific findings on your database consuming the most database time. And then it provides recommendations, which we'll see here in a few slides. And then again, as I've discussed a couple times before, is looking at the SQL Insights capabilities, that whole fleet holistic view of your application code performance, any degradation in SQL statements based on plain hash value changes, based on, I guess, index changes. It could be a growth of table over time, can attribute to longer wait times for your SQL statements. So we'll be able to kind of view where those pain points are coming from your application code. So I'll briefly discuss here the Exadata insights. So we can kind of look at this capacity planning on an Exadata level. You're able to see the specific key resources. You have current utilization, and then we forecast how many days you're going to hit until a defined set number. So if you have a CPU utilization set at 80% for your server, we'll show you how many days you have until you hit that 80% to give you an idea if you need to add resources to this, or if you can kind of do those consolidation or migration events ahead of time to find any or to mitigate any issues for bottleneck for performance. And we show this on database levels or on VM levels, so you kind of can get a really good idea of where those resources are being utilized in your Exadata and kind of capacity and forecast based on those individual attributes as well. So for the ADDM Spotlight, again, we're looking at the whole fleet view, finding the databases with the max overall impact on these ADDM findings, which could be attributed to SQL performance. It could be parameter configuration. It could be host configuration, resource utilization. And we're kind of producing these findings and then providing recommendations on how to mitigate those performance issues. And so here we're looking at that holistic view again of the last 30 days of individual ADDM snapshots, and then identifying which wait events are contributing the most to your database performance. So you can find if it's SQL, if it's application code, if it's CPU allocation, if you have a resource manager configured, if you're hitting those limitations and causing these wait events. It'll quickly find what your most impactful findings are for your database, so the degradation of your performance, and then it can recommend ways to mitigate that. So if you do need to make a specific parameter change or something, we do provide those capabilities.
Derek, sorry to interrupt, but now you mentioned wait events, and we have very specific questions saying how to set up an alert over wait events. You might want to do a very brief comment on that.
Sure. So we don't have specific wait events right now. You can set it to average active sessions. So that would be an overall wait event. If you have a specific threshold you want for the database, you can set that. And then if you go over that limit, then you would get an alarm. So we do have integrations in the OCI monitoring service where you can set these wait event kind of metrics for your database.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so here's a view of our SQL Insights capabilities. So again, this is kind of the fleet view of all of your SQL performance on your database. We split this up into how the application code is running. So if it's doing a lot of select statements, you'll be able to see that in PL SQL, delete statements. A lot of these can be broken up so you can kind of get an idea of what type of code is hitting your application for your database from the application. We do separate these into degrading SQL, improving SQL, so you can get an idea of how the autonomous is actually making your workflow better over time. So you'd quickly be able to find what plan changes have occurred, if there's been any indexes that have been built, so you can get those improving SQL details here. We show you the differences between the plan hash values of individual SQL statements, so you can kind of see where those transitions occurred and how much better your performance is for your application running on these databases. And so if you have multiple autonomous databases running the same code, you can identify which databases have the poor performing code if they're not caught up with the others. And this is where you can get into some of those custom administration tasks if you need to kind of mitigate any differences between the database code between your different environments. And finally, we kind of bring all of the telemetry together for your SQL statements into one single location. So you'd be able to have these custom reports and build widgets out of these to integrate into the dashboard. So if you're looking at top buffer gets for your databases over time, you could do that. So you could look at individual SQL plans with their plan hash values and how those are performing, and kind of get some of that custom tools built into the environment. And so finally, here's a quick look at the matrix that we provide with the feature support. So you can see that we have the availability for autonomous databases. Again, we don't have these currently for the Exadata insights for autonomous only deployments, but we can look at future roadmaps to incorporate this over time if we do have those capabilities. So this is kind of what we provide in the current standing. So I know I only have a few minutes to do a quick demo, but I should be able to do that very quickly, kind of going through our service. So this is the OCI console, hamburger menu to observability management. You'd see database management listed here, as well as ops insights. You can quickly drill down into our diagnostics and management, and this is where you get the fleet overview for your autonomous databases. Again, you can see kind of the inventory if you have a mixed estate between autonomous and non-autonomous, or serverless and dedicated. You'd quickly be able to identify those. We can see kind of the resource utilization here for our databases, get a good idea of the trending here. And then we can see we do have an autonomous discovered here. You quickly drill down into this individual database. You can get a view of all of your statistics for your autonomous database. And then you can, again, see top level statistics here, have all of your resources here for your performance, for your management, and for your administration. Really great details and simplified use for administering your database. And you can quickly drill down into the Performance Hub to get that real-time activity of your database. Here I'm looking at the performance for my application code. Again, we've kind of filtered out a lot of the internal, so you can only see your application here, which is very beneficial because you can kind of figure out what's going on and get an idea of what the performance is. And so we split this up, a lot of buffer busy waits going on in this environment. And if I wanted to, I could quickly just select a SQL statement, go ahead and go through this and create a SQL Tuning Advisor task to optimize the performance of the SQL statement coming from my application. So really wanted to show the quick view of the performance and the real-time monitoring for our database here. And so then going over to our capacity planning within the Ops Insights view. Let me change this to the UK. This is the capacity planning application that we provide. And so again, we're looking at all of our key resources, looking at CPU, storage, and memory. We can find any trends, any outliers in utilization. And then based on forecasting, we can see how many databases are going to be consuming more resources. So right now we have 5 databases with over 75% CPU utilization, but in the next 30 days, we expect 8 more databases to actually jump over this threshold. So we can kind of drill down, find which databases are the offenders, and then get a really good idea of how that forecast is going to be based on the historic trends of our database environment. And so we can also...
And Derek, a question exactly on top of that. A person's asking if you can track historical CPU usage, peak usage, and average usage, etc., over a period of time. Does the window of time capture depend on AWR, snapshot duration, and intervals?
No, so this is actually based on our own service. So we collect this telemetry for 2 years, and you can actually go up to 25 months to view this long-term historic utilization for your CPU, your memory, and your I/O. And then we've also built in the calculated cost as well for our environment. So you kind of get an idea of the expenditure associated with those as well.
Excellent.
Yep. And you can also unfilter the max and add the max. And so you can see the difference between average and max as well within the service. All right, I think that was pretty much for the time we'll have for the demo. If we have some more questions, yeah, we can definitely take a look at those.
So thank you guys again. I'll just run the quick poll here. I think most people probably learn a lot because it was not a topic people have learned about before. Please take a look at the links that Derek is sharing here. Right, we're going to make sure that those links are part of the recording, and you guys can see them and click on them at the end of the session, right when you watch this video later. So we have a couple of questions here. I'm not sure if you can read them there, Derek. If you open up the Q&A,
yeah, let me go ahead and pull that up.
You can probably check them out.
So we currently do have some limitations on, so this is looking at a benchmark of database with the DB performance, so optimal number for DBs. So we currently have limitations on our database groups right now. We can have, I believe, up to 200 databases per compartment, and then up to 5 compartments within our database groups. So that's kind of a view of 1,000 databases within our fleet overview. And so the limitations within the OCI console limits us to showing, I think, around 2,000 databases unfiltered. So you'd be able to kind of get an indication of how your fleet is. Anything over that number would have to be filtered by either your tags, if you're looking at your resources, and you can also base those on your IAM profiles configured in OCI. So you can kind of limit the number of resources any specific database administrator or user would be able to see within your fleet overview.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
And I answered the other one, Marcos, so I think we're done.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So I'll switch here. So if you guys have more questions again, please type them in the Q&A. Okay. Again, I would like to thank Derek and Herman for all the questions here. I'm going and the session. I'm going to put again the links, guys, in the chat. Okay, so these are the links that I shared at the beginning. So again, if you go back to the first link here, to the link that you're going to see that says the recordings, that link is going to take you to the recording of this session and the information and links to it. And this is where you're going to see, right, when you go to the ADB Learning Lounge. Okay, so we're going to have upcoming sessions showing up there, replays that you can play, and then the links for general autonomous database. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much again, Derek, and thank you, Herman. Really appreciate you guys joining our session.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it. I'm going to leave just a little closing song here, music, just for us to wait until other people might have other questions. But otherwise, again, thank you guys, and really appreciate it. And thank you everyone that joined.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.